It's Monday, you guys, and there's not much I can do about that. But I hope it boosts your mood that the next hour will be filled with lots of DFS and betting advice and analysis, because this is The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield, your host, and let's start with something that I do very well, overreacting. DraftKings contributors Julian Edlow, who is sitting in the studio next to me. Jeff Ulrich is also here, and by here I mean in Canada, and the Action Network's Matt LaMarca. Also here to overreact with me. This is exciting, guys. All right, this is Overreaction Monday, like I said, where I get your takes on some of Sunday's biggest surprises. So last night, Freddie Kitchens, Baker Mayfield, and the Browns stunk it up at home against the Rams. Odell Beckham was held to 56 yards. They're 1-2, but still have the second best odds to win the division. Julian, is it an overreaction to say the Browns will miss the playoffs at this point?
I think it is an overreaction to say that the Browns are going to miss the playoffs. They are 1-2. However, they're going to play the 2-1 Baltimore Ravens next week. They are 7-point underdogs on the road here, but winning that game would mean a tie atop the division between those two teams, with the Browns holding the tiebreaker with the win over the Ravens. So although it's unlikely that they're actually going to win that game as 7-point underdogs, they certainly have a chance to put themselves right back in the division with a statement win. So as the season goes on, you know, the Browns still have a couple tough games left, but the schedule will get easier. And I think that they're gonna figure this out. They may not fall into the playoffs in the end, but I think they're certainly going to contend for it, at least by the time we get to December here.
Jeff, you were the captain of the Browns hype train before the season started, at the beginning of the season, and I want to know if I'm overreacting by saying the Browns will miss the playoffs. And we don't have volume for you. You hate to see it.
2 days in a row, Jeff.
2 days in a row. What's going on? We don't have a good connection up there with Canada? All right, Matt, you go ahead. Okay, can't hear you either.
You want me to answer it again?
This is going really well. All right, either of you? Nope. All right, next question goes to...
Give me another one.
It's going to go with Julian because nobody else can answer here. So Giants fans sure have done a 180 on this guy. You know who I'm talking about. Daniel Jones. He looked like the real deal in his first career start. He put up the second most fantasy points of all quarterbacks yesterday. But the bad news for the Giants is that Saquon Barkley will miss 4 to 8 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Thankfully, it's not anything worse than that. So, Julian, isn't it overreaction to say Jones can thrive without Barkley and continue to be a top fantasy quarterback?
So I think it is overreacting to say that he's going to be a top fantasy quarterback, but I don't think it's overreacting to say that Daniel Jones will thrive with Saquon out of this offense. We saw how good he looked yesterday. Yes, it did come against a Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, but the Bucs have been better this year, at least average in most aspects of the passing game. So this isn't kind of the doormat defense that we've seen in previous years. What separates Daniel Jones here, and he looked great through the air, finding Shepard coming back from a concussion, finding the tight end Evan Ingram in this game. He did a really good job finding them. But his legs are obviously what separates him from Eli Manning. Eli Manning is just not a guy that moves around, and Daniel Jones looked extremely mobile, got out of the pocket for a pair of touchdowns rushing in that game. So that's what separates him. That's what gives him fantasy value. And with Saquon out here, that's the key part. Wayne Gulman, whoever else they figure out to try and make a little Band-Aid here for the time that Saquon misses, that's great. But Daniel Jones' ability to rush, they need rushing from wherever they can get it without Saquon. Being able to get it from the quarterback, that's what's really going to help his fantasy value. We'll see if he's among the elite, but he's definitely going to be very good.
Jeff, did we fix that connection up there in Canada?
I have no idea.
Oh, we did. Yeah, let's go. All right, so this is a twofer for you, Jeff. So
Browns are going to be fine, by the way. Browns are going to be fine. They just got to go like 1-1 in their next couple games here. They'll be okay. But Daniel Jones is really interesting next week. I mean, the Redskins, who we're going to see tonight, have been terrible against allowing against the pass, allowing a ton of passing touchdowns so far. And Daniel Jones in that first home game where the Giants can actually get to 500 and actually give people a little hope before they get throttled in the next couple games. It's a really good situation for fantasy purposes. Saquon being out obviously hurts a little bit. He did drop a touchdown pass, so maybe he's holding Daniel Jones back. That was a good by the way.
Hot take. Fired up.
Look, I think Daniel Jones is a real story here. I mean, you saw the athleticism, you saw the quick release. I mean, He's a good player. He's someone I wasn't as high on before the season.
Hey, I'm Brendan Glasheen, and this is Who I Miss On with Adam Levin.
I changed my line in preseason, and I'm not really that shocked that he had a good first game there. So I think he's definitely going to be a continuing story. I think he's going to be someone you need to look at in season long too if you have someone who at quarterback who can get the job done.
Matt, go ahead and take it away on both of these. It's a twofer for you as well. Got to get your take on the Browns, and then got to get your take on Daniel Jones.
All right, well, hopefully my audio is working now.
Yeah, it is. We can hear you.
Okay, beautiful.
So excited.
First, congratulations, Jules, on making it to the big desk. I know that this is a big
This is a big move, guys.
It's a really big day, yeah.
I'm a little bit more nervous about the Browns than these guys are. I would say that at the current time, they are underdogs to make the playoffs in my eyes. Like, if I was going to bet on them to be a playoff team, I would need plus money for sure, which is a step down from where they were. They were, like minus 150 just to win their division, let alone make the playoffs at the start of the season. So I'm very concerned about the offensive line. I don't think that they're really protecting Baker well enough to let him utilize those weapons. So I think it's going to be an uphill road. Jules mentioned the game against the Ravens. If they lose that, they're 1-3. That's a very tough hole to climb out from. So I'm nervous about them for sure. And then with Daniel Jones, I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about him, but I also think we need to pump the brakes just a tiny bit. Yes, he looked great in preseason. Yes, he shredded Tampa Bay. In my opinion, he still has not faced an NFL caliber defense yet. The Bucs have just been like hemorrhaging fantasy points to opposing passing games for the better part of 2 seasons now. And it was a really good game environment, two up-pace, up-tempo offenses. The Giants were down most of the second half, so they needed to throw the ball a lot. I do think that his athleticism obviously is encouraging from a fantasy perspective, but I think we need to just exercise a little bit of caution. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky has had, 45 fantasy point games in the past, and it's a little tempting, I think, to make Jones out to be just slightly better than he is at this point. And again, maybe he's great, maybe I'm undervaluing him. But I would, I would rather take some of the guys with more proven track records than say that, Daniel Jones is all of a sudden a top fantasy quarterback.
Well, let's stick with that game, Matt. Mike Evans finally looked like the Bucs' #1 receiver again. He led all players with 48 DK points yesterday. Is it an overreaction to say Evans is back and will continue to be the Bucs' best receiver?
Yeah, I'm very happy with Mike Evans. I finished top 10 in the $100 DraftKings single entry tournament yesterday, so thank you, DraftKings. I think the overreaction was saying that he was ever not the #1 wide receiver for the Bucs. He's their guy. I know Chris Godwin has had some great games. He's a very, very good #2 receiver, and I get that it's tempting to say, oh, this guy's better than Mike Evans, but Mike Evans is historically good. He's had 5 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons to begin his career. He's one of like 3 guys in the NFL history to do that. So that was a prime buy low spot for Mike Evans. I hope he took advantage of it because he is the Bucs' #1 wide receiver, and he's going to have another great season.
Jules, am I overreacting when I say Evans is back? Is it an overreaction to have ever said he was gone?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to where Matt was here in terms of, can we really write him off? All he did is have 2 bad games. If it happened in the middle of the season after his normal good start, we would just be waiting for him to re-break out, and that's exactly what he did in a good spot against the Giants. So it's not taking anything away from Chris Godwin. He's a great #2 wide receiver for the Bucs and got off to a good start, and I think he's going to have a good season too. But yes, Mike Evans is the #1 guy here. He's the top receiver, and Tampa's just fortunate enough to have Godwin as well, and he's going to mix in for some good games too. What I don't like is either of their Week 4 matchups. Now we've got Mike Evans coming up in price. I think he's above $7,000 on the Week 4 slate and traveling to play at LA against the Rams defense that we saw. Really different situation, but they really limited OBJ on Sunday Night Football. Tampa, like Cleveland, doesn't have a very good offensive line, so I think that LA defensive line is going to get in there on Jameis Winston. So I don't like this as a spot for Evans to go off for another big game, but just in terms of the season as a whole, Mike Evans is going to be fine.
All right, where do you sit on this one, Jeff? These guys are in agreement.
Yeah, it's definitely not a Mike Evans thing. I mean, he's clearly still like a #1 wide receiver in this league, probably a top 5, top 10 wide receiver, clearly. But it's a Tampa Bay offensive line, Jameis Winston thing. There's going to be weeks where the defense is just overwhelmed Jameis Winston, and he's just not good enough quarterback to overcome that and get Mike Evans the ball. You saw it the first 2 games. That's exactly what happened. And he was able to use Chris Godwin a little bit in the better matchups. And you're going to see that week to week with Mike Evans. So, look, it's going to be a week-to-week thing. Like, I completely agree with Julian. I don't think next week is a great spot for Mike Evans for continuation. But you look the week after that, they're taking on the Saints, who are terrible at guarding against opposing #1 wide receivers. So I really think that Godwin, Evans, depending on matchups, are going to take weeks where one is one and one takes a back seat. But, in terms of talent, there's nothing wrong with Mike Evans. It's just the situation he's in.
He's going to be 7,100, by the way. All right, guys. Kyle Allen looked real good in his 2019 Panthers debut, 25 DK points. Jules, Cam Newton has already been ruled out for Week 4. Is it an overreaction to say Allen should keep the Panthers' job from now on?
It is not an overreaction. The Panthers sent out a statement saying that Cam Newton is just going to basically rest for an indefinite amount of time until he's feeling more healthy. That's basically saying we want to see what we have in this kid, Kyle Allen, who looked good last year in a meaningless game against the Saints, but albeit it meant something to him. So this kid has looked good in every time he's gotten the opportunity. Obviously, the $4,000 minimum price was far too cheap for him on the slate last week. He's up to $5,200 on this slate, but he's proven to be a capable quarterback. Now, at Arizona is a tremendous fantasy spot. I don't think he's necessarily coming into a better spot here, or we'll even see a better spot in the next few weeks. So we'll see how long this lasts, but Cam Newton is hurt. Cam Newton is not right. So for as long as Cam is hurt, from what we've seen out of Kyle Allen, he should be the guy until he shows us a couple of poor games in a row and Cam Newton progresses and becomes more healthy. We'll see if that winds up happening.
Jeff, should Kyle Allen be the guy moving forward?
Look, if Cam Newton gets healthy and he's going to start running a little bit again, and he can throw the ball like 40 yards downfield and actually hit his receivers in strides, he should be the quarterback. I mean, give me a break. It's Cam Newton, right? He's a former MVP. He's obviously one of the most dynamic running quarterbacks ever to grace this league. But if he's not healthy, we've seen Cam Newton towards the end of last year and the start of this year play not healthy, and it's been terrible. And it's been worse than Kyle Allen. So if that Cam Newton tries to come back, yes, Kyle Allen should remain the starter. But, I think we're going to see the Panthers have a bye week coming up in Week 7. And I think Kyle Allen will probably start until then unless Cam makes some real progress. But considering the types of injuries we're talking about, his shoulder, I would actually be shocked if he comes back before that. And if he doesn't come back after that, well, those injuries might be a lot more serious than people realize. So it's going to be a week-to-week thing. If Allen keeps playing like this and Cam can't get healthy, he should probably go the rest of the year. And, the Panthers should reevaluate next season.
Matt, do you think that we should be deprived of Cam Newton press conference outfits for the foreseeable future because Kyle Allen keeps the starting job?
Well, I think Allen should be forced to wear them at a minimum.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, you're right. Cam should pick Kyle's outfits.
Right, he's still going to come to the games, I would imagine. Listen, if Cam Newton is healthy, he's the starting quarterback. I don't think there should be a controversy, but he's clearly not healthy at the moment. I do think it's funny, though, that they didn't want to rule him out last week until, basically the last possible second, and then Kyle Allen has a good game, and now he's already out for Week 4. So he's clearly hurt more than they're leading on, I think, and they now have a guy in Allen that they can feel at least somewhat confident in. So I'm not saying he's the guy. Putting up a good game against the Cardinals does not impress me. He played great. He was a great value for fantasy. Cam Newton has too much of a track record to say that he deserves to be sitting now over this guy who has played 2 games in his NFL career, one of which was against a team who didn't care if they win or lost.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to be back in just a minute here to take a look at betting angles for Monday Night Football. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Brendan Glasheen, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash, Adam Schefter reports Saquon Barkley's MRI has revealed a high ankle sprain. It could sideline him anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. Longer timeline is considered more likely. The Giants' star running back was in a walking boot and using crutches on the sideline. and after the game. Not only does the New York offense take a hit here, but so do Saquon's odds to win the NFL rushing title. Can't even find him anymore on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Dalvin Cook is now the front runner at plus 200 to be the league's leading rusher in 2019. As it pertains to DFS, there's bound to be a boost in Wayne Gulman's value. The 30-year back carried the ball 5 times for just 13 yards, targeted only once in the Bucs passing game. Gulman barely got a chance in 2018 because of Barkley's utter dominance. The former G-Men 4th-round pick, for the first time really in his career, has a clear role carved out for him. Feature back. If Daniel Jones keeps slinging it around the yard like he did in his first career start, Gulman may flourish in a complementary role to the passing game.
We're back. DraftKings contributors Julian Edlow and Greg Ehrenberg is going to pop up on your screen. They're back with me here on The Sweat. Guys, let's chase or fade some sportsbook bets for the Monday night clash between the Bears and Redskins. Julian, the Bears are pretty big road favorites tonight against the Skins. The Bears' offense has looked pitiful. Is there any way you'd chase them as 5.5-point favorites?
I think I will chase them as 5.5-point favorites, only because I don't want to chase anything related to the Washington Redskins at this point. They came off with a hot start, a surprising start against the Eagles in Philly in Week 1. But now, from what we've seen this NFL season, that looks like more of a product of how bad this Philadelphia secondary is than how good the Redskins passing offense is. So the Bears haven't shown me much, but they've also faced some tougher defenses. This should be the easiest defense they've faced. This should be a place where if Mitch Trubisky has anything, he should be able to show it to us. And the bigger issue is I just don't think Washington's offense will be able to handle Chicago's defense too well. So I would rather try and, I don't know, if there's a parlay you like, maybe use the Bears' money line as a piece of the parlay rather than go after the spread here. But if you're making me pick a side, I'm going Chicago.
Greg is apparently frozen, so we're going to stick with you here, Jules.
This
just
is lovely,
you and me
isn't it?
tonight, all right? Very low over-under tonight. Is there any way that you chase the over of 41?
I would not play the over on this game because of how the Bears' offense has looked and because of how good their defense is going up against Case Keenum and Adrian Peterson and a not very experienced wide receiver core. So the total on the game is a spot I guess I would lean under, but the places that have been hitting on these primetime games, the Monday night, Sunday night, and Thursday night games, the first half unders are a perfect 9-0 so far this season. So that's been a spot that until it misses, I'm going to keep being curious in those and playing those. So the first half total in this game is exactly half the total. Usually it can be a little bit less. It's 20.5. So you can play the under there, and that's been such a good spot in all these primetime games, including the Bears, who played in the first primetime game of the season against the Packers. I think that game was 7-3 at halftime, so easily hit. So if I'm going to play a total on this slate, on this game, it's going to be the first half under.
Hey, Greg, I think we have you back here. Bears pretty big road favorites tonight against the Skins. The Bears offense not very good. Is there any way you would chase them as 5.5-point favorites?
Well, first things first, does my audio work?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We're 2 for 2.
Exciting.
All right, so I'll hit on kind of everything that we hit on so far at once. This is a really hard game for me to get a read on. It's kind of a classic case that we have the stoppable force versus the movable object, because the Bears offense has not been able to move the ball at all so far this year. Trubisky has looked awful. And then the Redskins defense, they've given up over 30 points in both the games they've played so far. Now the caveat to that is this is the easiest matchup so far for the Redskins defense, and it's also the easiest matchup so far for the Bears offense. So I kind of think this is going to be a lower scoring game. I'm not really comfortable with that amount of points that the Bears are giving up on the road just because I have so little faith in Trubisky. I think that the Bears need to switch something up on offense. I think we're going to see Trubisky run the ball more because that was something he did really well last year. We haven't really seen him do it all so far this season. And I also think they might try to get David Montgomery a little bit more involved. So I think it's going to lead to just kind of a slower paced game, a lot of running, and probably not all that many points scored.
Okay, guys, you can get plus, or did you answer the question here, Greg, about the over 41?
Yeah, I said the under.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention.
Thanks for listening, Jeff.
Yeah, I really wasn't paying attention. All right, you can get plus money on Terry McLaurin having more receiving yards tonight than Allen Robinson. Would you chase that, Greg?
So I wouldn't. Maybe if it was like massive odds, I would go after it, except I still think that Robinson is the much better receiver overall. And if we look at their numbers for the season, they've been pretty comparable. Like, they're pretty close in receiving yards. And that's with everything going wrong that possibly could have gone wrong for the Bears offense. They're not moving the ball. Trubisky has been able to throw the ball. But when he has thrown it, it's gone to Allen Robinson. And Robinson is generally open on a lot of plays. This is an easy matchup for him, whereas it's a much harder matchup on the other side. So I think that Robinson is the guy to go with here. I can't take the plus odds.
Do you agree, Jules? You want to go with Robinson here?
I do agree. With Terry McLaurin, we've seen him putting up numbers so far, but it's also been, like Greg said, how things have gone so terribly for Chicago. Things haven't gone great for Washington, but in terms of setting up for the pass game, it has gone well. They got up by throwing the ball on Philly and then went down big against Philly and had to keep throwing. And then they went down big after a slow start with Dallas and had to sling it there. So if we're going to say that the Bears are going to come out and have this kind of sluggish offense, Washington might not necessarily have to throw it as much, and they're going to be facing by far the toughest defense that they've had to face this season, which will also make things tougher on the rookie receiver. And like Greg said, Allen Robinson is just the better player. We should see the Bears try and get more creative against the worst defense they've seen yet and try and find ways to get him the ball. He did have a big game against a good Green Bay defense. There just weren't any points really in that game. So just from a yardage standpoint, plus 106 on McLaurin isn't enough for me, so I'm going to go with Robinson here too.
David Montgomery has the best odds of any player to find the end zone twice at plus 700. Greg, are you chasing the idea of the rookie having a breakout game?
So I'm going to say I think that he probably has his best game of the season so far tonight, but I can't go for only plus 700 for him to score 2 touchdowns. The reason being that he hasn't been all that involved in the offense so far. It's kind of been a three-way timeshare. So if he had done it so far, or if the odds were longer than plus 700, I think I could go for it. For DFS, I think that Montgomery makes for a nice play. But I just can't trust the set plus 700 on the money line, because that would pretty much mean that we need him to do this at least twice over the course of the season. And we just haven't seen that from him so far.
I mean, Jules, Washington's run defense ranks second to last in average yards allowed, kind of opening the door for Montgomery here, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree with Greg that Montgomery should have a good game. Now, I don't know if I want to take him to get 2 touchdowns, especially in a game with a total of 41 points. That's pretty tough to do. So I think that there are different ways that we can focus on Montgomery potentially having a good game here. Greg said he's a good DFS play. I agree with him there. You can get Montgomery at plus 190 to score a touchdown and have the Bears, who are 5.5-point favorites, win the game. That's another way to get exposure to him. And you can just look at his player props in terms of yardage. He's had some long catches, or had a long catch, I think, against Green Bay this season. You can look at his rushing prop, his receiving prop, his combined yardage prop, and find different ways to get exposure to him. But I don't think we have to chase 2 touchdowns here in what we all agree is going to be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, people are hoping it will be a little more exciting, you know. Been a couple snooze fests.
Yep.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll have you back in a bit to get your Monday Night Showdown picks. Plus, we'll sprinkle in some baseball after Who'd I Miss On with Brendan Glasheen and Adam Levitan.
Hey, I'm Brendan Glasheen, and this is Who'd I Miss On with Adam Levitan. WeMo, Who'd I Miss On, for those of you who are new or hate acronyms, is when we recap Adam Levitan's misses from the NFL Sunday main slate. Chris Carson, for example, yielded just 5.1 DK fantasy points, and that was without Rashad Penny, inactive due to injury. But I guess Levy playing from behind certainly doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we never got this Rashad Penny news. It was such a disaster because I think they didn't want to play CJ Prosise a ton, but of course it just got the worst possible flow. Chris Carson fumbled for the 4th time in 3 weeks, and then they get behind big. And of course, when they're in strict passing situations, it was CJ Prosise the whole time. So I feel good about the process of moving to Chris Carson. When Rashad Penny was ruled out, it just sometimes that's the way it goes, and did not expect Seattle to get behind that much early in that game.
I failed our viewers last Monday by not explaining Levitan's shower ideology of 2 guys who played together in college now play together in the NFL. They're new bloods in the NFL. They have established chemistry because they've showered together from their college days. The example of that is Mason Rudolph and James Washington of the Steelers. 3 years of dominance at Oklahoma State did not carry over this past Sunday. 2 catches on 4 targets for Washington. Time to explain yourself, Levitan.
Yeah, it turns out that the data there, we only have a very small sample, and the correlation is not very strong on the shower narrative. Yeah, I mean, James Washington played almost every snap The problem is that the Steelers ran very few plays. Mason Rudolph had under 30 pass attempts. James Washington did draw a pass interference where he would have caught a really long bomb, and really that's his whole game, is going long and catching bombs. So it didn't work out, but I'm not ready to write off the shower narrative just yet.
Just a leaky shower this past week. All right, last one. Only 2 of 5 targets reeled in by Cowboys wideout Devin Smith. Figured his role would expand with Michael Gallup sidelined. What happened here?
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys have a lot of mouths to feed. I mean, even with Michael Gallup out, they still use Tony Pollard a lot. Obviously, they use Zeke in the pass game some. They use Jason Witten. They use Randall Cobb. They use Amari Cooper. So it was a little bit thin on Devin Smith, even though he was going to play just about every snap. And again, he's similar to James Washington, a guy who needs a big play to make it happen, and just didn't make it happen yesterday. So that's sometimes the way it goes. That's who Adam Levitan missed on in Week 3. You can find his coverage on DK Live, the DK Playbook, and on Twitter at Adam Levitan. We'll catch you next Monday, Levy, to see who you missed on in Week 4.
This show isn't just about football, you guys. Here to prove it is DraftKings contributor Greg Ehrenberg and the Action Network's Matt LaMarca. Guys, this is MLB Pick Off. We run through all 5 games on tonight's slate. Wow, all 5. And get your top DFS play from each game. First up, Phillies and Nationals. Patrick Corbin is the most expensive player on the slate. Greg, would you pay up for him, or do you like somebody else to be a better fantasy play?
Good to see you so excited about baseball today, Jessie.
Let's go!
I kind of think we have to like Patrick Corbin by default tonight. So we look at the pitching options, like they're not very strong. And if you want to go up for an expensive guy, the options are either Patrick Corbin, it's Blake Snell, who's not really an option because he's on a 3 to 4 innings limit, and then there's Caleb Smith, who has given up. He's scored 10 or less DK fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 starts. So if you have the extra money, Corbin's just by far the superior option of any of the expensive pitchers, that he just ends up being in play because there's no other choice.
Matt, do you agree there's no other choice? Are you going to try to differentiate yourself here?
I mean, differentiating yourself on a 5-game slate is going to be tough, but I'm not doing it with Corbin. I think that he is just by far the most talented pitcher on this slate. I mean, excluding Blake Snell, who, like Greg said, is only going to pitch a couple of innings. Corbin is just a clear class above all of these other guys. And the Phillies are a pretty good matchup. Their projected lineup has struck out in 30.9% of at-bats against left-handers over the past 12 months. So I think Corbin is the safest option on the slate. I think he has the most upside. There's another pitcher who I think is going to be a little bit chalkier in Steven Matz. I think if you want to get, cute and differentiate your lineup, I would rather play around with that second spot than with Corbin.
I do love to get cute, Okay, next, the Rays, who are trying to gain ground on the Indians in the wild card race, hosting the Red Sox. Matt, who has the most fantasy appeal in this one?
Yeah, for me, it is Mr. Weddle. Joe Wendell at 3,500. Anytime you can get a leadoff hitter at that cheap of a salary, they're going to be appealing. Wendell's on the positive side of his splits, and he's taking on Jhoulys Chacín, who has been absolutely dreadful this season. I mean, he was okay with the Brewers last year, but all of his advanced metrics suggested that he was due for regression, and that's exactly what's happened to him. He's got an ERA over 5. He's allowing plenty of home runs. So I think that the Rays are actually a nice team to target in general tonight, and I'm certainly interested in their leadoff hitter at 3,500.
Greg, you looking at the Rays too?
Yeah, so I have Wendell here also. The only other thing to add to what Matt said is that even though Chacín was better last year, he was still not good against left-handed bats. Like, they still did well against him. He was just really lucky and really good against right-handed hitters. So I like him. And then the other thing to consider also is that Chacín is only going to be opening this game, so he's only going to be pitching a few innings. But the Red Sox also have a really terrible bullpen, so the Rays are going to be in a good situation from start to finish of this game.
Let's move to the Cardinals and Diamondbacks. Greg, who's the best fantasy player in this one?
So I have I have Josh Rojas. I totally blanked for a second on who it was.
It's okay. It happens.
So there's actually going to be a little bit of overlap because the reason I like him is going to be probably similar to the reason that Matt likes his guy. Adam Wainwright has not been great against left-handed hitters this year. Rojas also is somebody who has a little bit of power upside. He also has speed upside. He's stolen a handful of bases so far this month, and that's something to take advantage of against Wainwright, who's been letting left-handed hitters get on, and he struggled to hold runners on base at times. So I think that he makes sense as a little bit of an upside play. Overall, the Diamondbacks I don't think are a very strong team to target, but I think he makes for a good value play, 3,500.
Matt, who are you looking at in this one?
I like Jarrod Dyson. A lot of times, I think speed is overlooked in DFS. We focus on the guys with the big power who can hit home runs. And I just don't see that as this kind of slate. You know, I don't think you're going to need to roster, you know, like 6 different home run hitters to win a GPP tonight. So I like what Dyson brings to the table with his legs. Amongst outfielders, nobody has averaged more stolen bases per game than this guy over the past 12 months. And he can do a little bit of damage with his bat. He's not going to be, you know, a big power guy, but he's making pretty good contact right now. He has an average distance of 262 feet over the past 15 games, which is really good for him. So I think that he's an appealing play, another leadoff hitter. And again, given Wainwright's struggles against left-handers, I like him in this spot. I think he's a nice upside play that shouldn't carry a ton of ownership.
Moving on to the Marlins and Mets. Matt, who would you roster from this game?
Yeah, so this one's easy for me. J.D. Davis. I love this guy. I don't know why he doesn't play every day for the Mets, because the dude just rakes. He's been particularly good against left-handed pitchers, and like particularly good against left-handers when facing them at Citi Field. He has a WRC plus over 190 when facing a southpaw at home this season. He's got a premium spot in the Mets lineup. He's batting 4th. He's 4,100. I think all of this is very good for Mr. Davis. It would not shock me if he went yard tonight.
Greg, Marlins, Mets, who you got?
Yeah, I think we have to mention Steven Matz at some point on this show, because to me, I do think he's the best value pitcher on the slate per dollar. I think he's the strongest option. He's at home. He's had weird splits this year. He's actually been really dominant pitching at Citi Field. He's a sub-2 ERA, and then he just gets blasted whenever he goes on the road. So it's not an issue. He's pitching at home at Citi Field today. And then it's also a really favorable matchup against the Marlins. They have the worst record in the National League. They're one of the worst teams in baseball against left-handed pitching. So for the price for Matz at 7,600, like if he was priced up to like 10,000 or something, I think this would be a tougher decision for me. He's going to be really chalky, like Max said, but this is chalk that I'm willing to eat. It's just too good of a spot for him on honestly with really limited options.
Some delicious chalk. Finally, the Orioles and Blue Jays. Anybody worth rostering here, Greg?
Yeah, I think Billy McKinney at 3,300 is one of the better value bats on the slate. Also, something to point out is that Lourdes Gurriel, who was supposed to be hitting in the middle of the Blue Jays lineup, he was just scratched with an illness. So get him out of lineups, because I think the Blue Jays make for a really strong stack tonight. McKinney's leading off again. He led off last night and had a couple of home runs. The Blue Jays have the highest implied run total on the slate. So they're my favorite stack, and I actually don't think they're going to be all that popular, even though they have a high implied run total.
Matt, Orioles, Blue Jays, who are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at Billy McKinney as well. I mean, 3,300 leadoff hitter, again, for the team with the highest implied team total on the slate. That's just a really hard guy to fade, but I completely disagree with Greg about them not being the chalk tonight. Like, I would say that...
I think the Nationals will be a more popular offense.
Oh, I completely disagree. I mean, they're not even implied for close to the same amount of runs. They're not that expensive, and you can pretty easily pair them with Steven Matz. I think that combination, Blue Jays and Matz, is going to be like the go-to option. So if you do choose to go that way, and I agree there are merits to both of those players, you're probably going to want to differentiate with some of your like one-off plays or the second team that you look to stack with them.
All right, guys, that's it for baseball. Taking a look at NFL Week 4 spreads after these words from the Pat Mayo Experience.
Right now, number 1 in the waiver wire power rankings, I have Wayne Gulman. So here's the question with him. And it's him, and there's no one else really. There's just the same retreads that we've seen every single week, except for like Darrell Williams, and that's all going to depend on the health of Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy. But Wayne Gulman, what are the chances that he ends up being the starter for the entire time that Saquon Barkley is out? Or, like, they have Elijah Penny on this team, it's not going to be him. So it's going to be Gulman, or do you think that they go out and sign someone else? So if you spend, like, most of your fab budget to go and get Gulman for these 4 games, and then after 1 week they sign Jay Ajayi off the street and he's all of a sudden the starter, you're going to feel like an idiot.
Yeah, that's I think is the biggest worry right now, because I was surprised because Barkley was out early. He only had one carry in the red zone, and it's not like the Giants weren't in the red zone during this game here. Only 5 carries overall when Barkley was out there. So I don't think the outlook for him is good. I mean, he's just not good, period. Like, there's no scenario where you're like, oh, I got to get him, other than he's probably going to be the starter, at least for the next couple of weeks. But, I mean, he's got a decent matchup coming up against the Redskins. They've allowed over 100 yards already to the Eagles and the Cowboys. We'll see how they fare against the Bears tonight. But he's just I mean, I wouldn't feel great about putting him in my lineup. Like, I get that he's going to be the starter. He's probably going to have the lion's share of the snaps, but he sucks. How else do you say it? Like, he flat out sucks.
Well, when we get to this point, you hate Josh Jacobs, you hate Chris Carson, you hate Wake Up. Who are you starting in fantasy? Honestly.
Okay, well, Carlos Hyde, who's on your list, if he's still out there, like, I think he's actually one of the more enticing options, especially because Duke Johnson's been an absolute non-factor. Like, when Duke Johnson was traded to the Texans, it felt like this was going to be a spot where you'd get some of the receiving work, but neither is getting the receiving work. So I think if Hyde is still available, I think he's the more attractive option. Right now, he's leading in the snaps. He's got a Panthers matchup in week 4, who didn't have I don't think that's a tough matchup for him either. I think Carlos Hyde is probably the more attractive option at this point if he's still available.
So if you lost Saquon Barkley today and both those guys were available, you pick up Carlos Hyde before you picked up Wayne Gallman? That's interesting.
Well, I mean, so being realistic, like, do you see a scenario where Gallman's going to bring back any type of value? Like, he's not going to be someone who's going to go rush 100 yards or whatnot. They didn't use, like, the biggest thing that I was surprised was that he only had 1 carry in the red zone.
Yeah, but but who cares? They were down. Like, when he entered the game and Barkley got hurt, they were down by 20 points. How much did you expect him to run? I understand that, but even when this game was closer, he was a non-factor. Listen, he ended up being on the field for 63% of the snaps in this game. I don't think that he's a top 10 option, but eventually you have to start someone. And he is an option that's going to end up being, at least presumably for 1 week, and we'll see how it goes, the workhorse in this offense. Not a great offense, but looks significantly better with just a more athletic quarterback under center. Maybe his mobility can open up some running lanes. We didn't quite see that with Barkley early on, but it was very early on in that game. And Tampa actually has a really good run defense. So they've shut down running backs all 3 weeks so far. That I think that Gallman, if you could tell me that he was going to start the next 4 weeks, I'd probably spend as much as it took of my fab dollars to get him, especially because I just lost Saquon. If I didn't just lose Saquon and I have 2 capable options, maybe that is a scenario where you mentioned that Wayne Gallman is not that good. We don't know what his talent is. It's probably below average versus above average if it comes down to it, that you're not forced into that position. But Carlos Hyde has been there for 3 weeks and no one has pounced on him. And frankly, he also isn't very good. So at least give me a situation with Wayne Gallman where at least he's going to have some upside, because although Duke Johnson's not touching the ball a ton, he's on the field a ton.
Well, the other thing, too, about Gallman that I worry about, too, is that the Giants haven't had a quarterback that can rush the ball in years. And I think that's going to be a factor, too, because obviously Daniel Jones can rush the ball. We saw him do so. He rushed in for 2 touchdowns yesterday as well. Like, that's a factor that I think we're not taking into consideration, because it's always been Eli Manning. Obviously, Eli Manning is not that type of quarterback, but I think that kind of changes up the perception of this Giants offense as well. And I think that's something to consider, when making those decisions.
I think that's a good thing for Wayne Gallman. That's a good thing for any running back to have a mobile quarterback under center.
I mean, you're not wrong. I have no faith in Gallman. I feel like if they're not happy with how he looks, they can easily go out and sign somebody else. I just don't see him being the starter until Barkley comes back.
Right now, number
Back
one in the
to
waiver
football
wire
we go.
rankings,
DraftKings contributors Julian Edlow, Jeff Ulrich, and Greg Ehrenberg have rejoined the program. To be fair, Julian has been sitting here the whole time.
I have.
Guys, it's time for NFL high or low. So are these spreads for week 4 too high or too low? The Patriots are going to take on, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, the undefeated Bills up in Buffalo this week. New England is at -7. Is that spread too high or too low, Jules?
So I think that this spread is too low, despite the fact that the Buffalo Bills are undefeated. And the Patriots actually, going back looking at their wins, all the teams they've beaten haven't beaten anyone, and the Bills have actually beaten one of the teams that they've beaten has actually gotten a win, but they've had a cakewalk of a schedule as well. So I think this sets up as a wake-up call for the Bills. The Patriots within the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady era are 14-4-1 against the spread in their trips up to Buffalo. So usually pretty successful. Nice what the Bills have done so far this season, but this is by far the toughest matchup that they've faced. The Patriots, they should have had a shutout last week. They had a muffed kick that got a touchdown, and then the rookie quarterback comes in relief of Tom Brady and throws a pick six. That defense, they think they should have back-to-back shutouts. I think they're going to try and prove that they are still the real deal up in Buffalo and cover this spread.
New England -7. Jeff, do you think it's too low?
First of all, Jesse, I'd be careful there. Watch out for the Bills Mafia. Okay?
Oh, God,
watch your back.
I'm scared. I've seen the videos.
You shouldn't be. Look, here's the thing. I think this line is pretty much good, but like right where it should be. But I do think it's going to go in favor of Buffalo as the week gets on. I think the Buffalo Bills hype and the Bills Mafia may start to bet this line down to where you get -6.5 or -6 on the Bills. And then it's become too low. Look, Buffalo is a nice story, but Julian mentioned the New England defense. Like, everyone's worried about what's going on the New England offensive side. The New England defense is top 3 right now. They are a very, very good unit. And also, you just look at some of the past records of these teams. New England's 14-8 as away favorites. Buffalo's only 3-5 as home underdogs over the last couple of years. So trends point towards New England getting this cover. I think 7 is probably a good number, but I do think it's going to go in favor of the Bills as the week goes on.
Greg, what do you think? And am I going to get put through a table for speaking disparagingly about the Bills Mafia?
No, because I don't think they leave Buffalo. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's like this weird place they're caged in. They all melt or something if they leave. Like,
okay. I don't feel so good. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you're safe. You're safe. I think the spread's a little bit too low, so if they're coming for you guys, they're coming for me also. Like, if we look at the Bills so far, they've had a ridiculously easy schedule, and even some of those games, like, they barely eked out. Like, they just barely beat the Jets on a last-minute drive. They ended up winning by 1 point. So they've been, like, about as unimpressive a 3-0 team as you could possibly be. I think they're fine. I think they're going to be competitive this year. They could be competing for a wild card spot. But this is just a spot where the Patriots are so much better, and I think that this is a spot where Josh Allen could really get in trouble, maybe throw a couple interceptions.
Biggest spread of the week is in the Chargers-Dolphins game. LA is favored by 16.5 right now. Jeff, is that number too high?
I don't think it's too high. I think that the Chargers should probably be favored by more. And I want to make a case for Josh Rosen being the improvement the Dolphins need, but the rest of their team is just so terrible. Their kickers are terrible. I mean, they're missing field goals. They're making like 30-yard punts. And the Chargers have actually been pretty good as away favorites over the last couple of years. They're definitely a winning team against the spread in that role. They don't really have that home field advantage in LA with kind of like the displaced fan base. So they've actually been pretty good the last couple of years getting it done as away favorites. And again, I just feel like the Dolphins are just nothing outside of maybe like some improved play from Josh Rosen leads me to think that they're going to be able to cover. So I think the Chargers are in a spot here to cover.
Greg, I know it's a big spread, but are the Chargers going to cover just because the Dolphins are so awful?
Yeah, the Dolphins stink. I think the spread's too low. I don't even know what's the proper spread to make for Dolphins games. Like, they've had ridiculous spreads for these games. They're just losing by like 30, 35 points. Like, what's going to happen by the end of the season? Are they going to be just like 30-point underdogs in games? Like, what's that spread going to be when they play in New England? And I do think that Josh Rosen is an upgrade for him. He's better than Fitzpatrick. But it doesn't matter if receivers can't catch the ball because he made a bunch of really nice throws on Sunday. And there were just guys dropping balls in the end zone. There were guys wide open, balls bouncing off
And their coach isn't even challenging like possible touchdowns. I mean, it's...
Yeah, they're a disaster. It's far the worst I've ever seen. And then, not to go too far off here, it's almost ruining survivor pools. Like, that used to be a challenge. Now it's like, there's just... These teams are just locks to win because they're 25-point favorites playing the Dolphins.
Yeah, Jules, just a dumpster fire in Miami right now.
Yeah, how can you possibly bet on the Dolphins? They haven't covered the spread in any of their 3 games this season, including the 21.5 points against Dallas last week. So yeah, you have to take the Chargers. The Chargers are nothing. It's just a question of if you feel comfortable with the 16.5. I do feel comfortable with the 16.5 because the Chargers are a pretty good team, and they should be angry. They're coming off back-to-back games where it came down to the last possession. They had a chance to win. They dropped both those games. This is a team that challenged the Chiefs for the division last year. So yeah, they're going to come into Miami and just beat up on one of the worst football teams, maybe the worst professional football team that we've ever seen. The Dolphins, I do agree, Josh Rosen should be the guy, but the only touchdown Miami's scored this season did come from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Rosen can sling it as much as he wants. The Miami receivers either duck out of the way of the ball or can't catch the ball, and that's not going to get the job done. So until we see the Dolphins cover a spread, you just can't bet on the Dolphins, and yeah, we're going to see some ridiculous numbers this season.
That is not how you win a football game. All right, the Ravens are 7-point favorites when they host the Browns this Sunday. Is that way too small of a spread here, Greg?
So I think this should be a tighter spread. I think that right now we're kind of at a spot where the Browns are being as undervalued as they could possibly be, and I think there's a little bit of hype behind the Ravens based on their 2-0 start. Look, we kind of thought this might happen. Lamar Jackson didn't look great throwing the ball last week. I don't think he's going to be as bad throwing as he was last year, but I don't think he's going to be as good as he was against teams like the Dolphins in the first couple games of the season. So I still think Lamar Jackson's going to be a really big threat running the football, but I'm not sold on his ability to throw the ball, and that's going to hurt their chances to really blow teams out and cover big spreads against a pretty decent team in the Browns.
Jules, too small of a spread?
So this one opened up at 6, and the money's obviously been coming in on Baltimore here, and like Greg said, I think people are overreacting a little bit. If you get this within a touchdown, I can see the appeal for Baltimore at home. But yeah, +7, and if people keep coming in on this, and you can get +7.5, I think that this is, just like we said off the top of the show, people are overreacting about the Browns potentially missing the playoffs. I think they can show up in this game and at least make it competitive. They just lost to the Rams by 7 points, albeit they were at home for that game, but I don't see the Browns. The Browns got blown out against the Titans in week 1. I don't think we're going to see them get, wiped off the field like that anymore. And Baltimore also isn't a team that we necessarily see put their foot on the gas and run away. They did do that against Miami, but that was against the Dolphins. When it came time for them as 13-point favorites to face the Cardinals at home, that was also a game that came down to the wire. So I think that Cleveland +7 or better in this one makes a lot of sense.
Jeff, Ravens 7-point favorites when they host the Browns. Is that too small of a spread?
This is set I really like Cleveland this spot. This is setting up potentially for the bet of the week for me. The Ravens are 6-11 as home favorites over the last 2 years covering against the spread. They just haven't been good at getting it done. Julian mentioned how they played against the Cardinals. I mean, they let Arizona in that game till the very end. Lamar Jackson should have been picked off 3 times last week. I mean, I know some of those plays were crazy, but he's just throwing ducks up there in a couple instances. So the only thing that's holding me back right now is the health of the Cleveland secondary. If we can get some good news early in the week, I would be all over Cleveland +7. I think this is way too big. It's an overreaction for sure.
All right, thanks, guys. Jeff will be back along with the Action Network's Matt LaMarca to give their Monday Night Football showdown picks after we check out the latest from the Panel B podcast.
Second straight year that draft Twitter has really been down on a guy. Josh Allen last year, Daniel Jones this year. Both go out and somewhat have silenced the people. Do we need to kind of maybe not change, but at least amend the way that we evaluate guys?
Oh, so wait, you're telling me that Twitter was wrong? That's a first. I've never seen that one before.
After one game.
He looked phenomenal. There's really no other way to put it. He just brings a completely different dynamic to a Giants offense that they never had before. When he took that first rush, it was whoa. When have you seen...
That person's allowed to run?
But... I mean, he was good in tight windows. He had good pocket presence. He scrambled when he needed to. Just a lot to like about Danny Dimes. Only one game against the Buccaneers. Let's see how he... I will say, though, it really did show, I guess, his green... He showed how green he is still, because once Saquon Barkley was out of that game, they just started rushing the hell out of him, and he looked lost. Mm-hmm. I think it was during the second or third quarter where they just kept going at him, and he just couldn't get anything. His throws were all of a sudden offline, but he seemed to kind of regain his composure, looked a lot better, but I think that's something that they'll definitely need to work on moving forward. But again, it's the first game, Let's not get too nitpicky here.
A game they should have lost. Not like it matters. We would have looked at him the same way whether they win that game or lose
Bruce
that game.
Bruce Arians admitted that he took a penalty on purpose to make the kick farther, which then missed, which makes no sense. But we want to talk overreaction Monday. Danny Dimes plays one game. He is now well ahead of the field as the favorite for Rookie of the Year on DK Sportsbook at +200. So all you have to do is play a game and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and guess what? You're the Rookie of the Year.
Meanwhile, Kyler Murray's throwing 80 passes a game.
Yeah.
Well, he's not winning and he's not playing very well. Kyler Murray's second in line at plus 350. Kyler Murray, I believe, closed at plus 250 at the start of the season, so he's already gone down after 3 starts, going, what is he, 0-2-1. We expected probably some bigger numbers there, but he's throwing so much that he obviously has to stay alive. What would help Daniel Jones is the fact that Saquon's going to miss several weeks now with that high ankle sprain, and they're going to have to throw the ball because Wayne Gallman is not going to be able to carry the load at running back there.
Yeah, Kyler, who had to face the Lions and then the Ravens to start with, gets to see Daniel Jones go up against the Buccaneers. But you mentioned, too,
easier times will come.
Yeah, overreaction Monday here. Giants, 3-point home favorites without Saquon next week as of now, up against the Redskins, who we don't yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
these are always the tricky lines. This is kind of like how we get the main slate released before Monday Night Football is played, and then sometimes we can get a value play based on what happens on Monday Night Football. This is one of those places where if you think Washington's going to get crushed by the Bears on Monday night and you like what you saw from the Giants, maybe you take the -3 now because it could, if Washington doesn't look good against Chicago, which they're probably not going to look very good against that defense, that can easily balloon up to -4 by the end of the game. So it's something where you kind of got to take a stance and go early on it. Or if you feel the other way and you think it's overreaction on the Giants, but Washington's going to get killed by the Bears on Monday night, you wait and take Washington for more points after the game.
Another thing that I noticed too is that, and obviously the game was a little construed because Barkley was out, but Gulman only had 1 red zone carry the entire game. It was all Daniel Jones in the red zone, whether he was rushing or throwing. I don't think they have any faith in him at all. Like, I don't want to say they're going to abandon the running game, but they're going to be a very pass-heavy team for whatever the 4 or 5 weeks that Barkley's out.
The sweat is back for one final segment here. We have DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich and the Action Network's Matt LaMarca joining me for Monday Night Football Showdown picks. Who do you like in tonight's Bears-Redskins Showdown contest? Now, Mitchell Trubisky is the most expensive player in this showdown. Jeff, should he be, and are you rostering him?
Yeah, he definitely should be the most expensive, in my opinion. I mean, you just have to look at this slate and the fact that who brings, the potential to rush for a touchdown, throw for a couple touchdowns against a weaker passing defense and just score in multiple ways. And there's really no one else. I mean, David Montgomery maybe, but he's kind of still in a timeshare. Case Keenum's not going to do that against the Bears defense. And Allen Robinson might be the only player, but if you are going to play Allen Robinson, you can pair him with Trubisky. And again, I think this is a good spot for Trubisky to get off with the rush and possibly even rush for a touchdown. So I think this might be one of those spots where everyone's just so down on Trubisky, and he just kind of throws in like a 300-yard, multiple touchdown game. So to me, he's the clear upside play. I think he's a must play tonight.
Matt, is it as clear to you that Trubisky should be the most expensive, and do you think he's a must play like Jeff does?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, Trubisky has struggled this year, but those games have come against the Packers, who have a really good defense. And then last week they played Denver, who supposedly has a really good defense. I mean, they haven't always played great this year, but they have a lot of talent on defense at least. And we know Trubisky is what he is at this point. Like, he's an upside play. He's not going to give you consistent production every single week, but he's going to have big games. No one on this slate matches his upside. And to be frank, nobody on the slate matches his ceiling projection. So, or his median projection, I should say. So, like, yeah, I think you lock in Trubisky and you say thank you to anybody who fades it.
Matt, is this a showdown where you'd consider playing both defenses?
I can't play the Chicago D at 6,200. I think that's a little bit too expensive for me. You're really asking them to come up with a defensive touchdown. And, like, yes, obviously that can happen. But if you fade them, that's the only way you're getting burnt. And how often does that happen? Like, once a couple times a season. So I'm fine with fading the Bears D. I'm more interested in the Redskins. But even them, I'm not, they're not like a super fortuitous defense. I don't see them creating a lot of turnovers. So the Redskins, if I had to pick one, but I think it's a slate where you can get away with playing no defenses potentially.
Oh, wow. Okay. Jeff, I mean, what do you think about the no defenses, and would you play both defenses?
I definitely wouldn't play both defenses. And honestly, the more I look at this game and just that we've been talking about it tonight, I kind of starting to like the over in this game. And I do think the play might be to avoid both defenses. I would side, if I was going to play one, I would consider paying up for the Bears, just because there is a pretty high correlation spot you can go with Cordell Patterson or Tariq Cohen. And for a showdown, that's a pretty good upside bet just there. I mean, you obviously, the Bears are still the better defense too. I just can't see any value in Washington. I know Trubisky has the tendency to throw some picks, but like Washington has no pass rush. They have the second worst adjusted sack rate in the league as far as defensive lines. They've got 2 sacks on the year, basically only trailing the sackless Denver Broncos defense. So I just don't know where these points are going to come from if you roster the Redskins D. I think there's enough upside, like kind of boom or bust targets on this slate too, where you don't have to dip down and just take the points with the D. So I kind of side with Matt here, although I do think you can, justify paying up for the Bears if you're going to correlate them with like a Cohen or something like that.
Jeff, who would you put in the captain spot?
Yeah, it's Trubisky. I mean, like, I just think you're overthinking it if you go anyone else. I mean, sure, Terry McLaren, maybe he could go off for like a long touchdown. That's probably the only Redskins player I would consider. Maybe Chris Thompson, because he's going to catch like 10 passes in junk time or something like that. But those are pretty big stretches. So if you want to be contrarian and go Washington, I guess that's the route I would go. But I think if you're, I don't want to say smart, but I think if you're making it and looking at this game, this slate rationally, it's got to be Trubisky and just go contrary in other places, because there's lots of different values and boomer bust plays out there.
Matt, I have a feeling you're also going to captain Trubisky.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's either Trubisky or Allen Robinson. I do think that Robinson has sort of established himself as the clear number 1 in Chicago. He's gotten a nice, healthy amount of targets both games. So I think you could potentially captain him and hope that maybe he has, 2 receiving touchdowns from Mitchell Trubisky. But you want both of those guys. It's just which one do you put a captain and which one is a utility.
Matt, which player over 7K do you like the least and would fade?
Yeah, for me, this one is easy. He's gotten some love on this show, but I'm fading David Montgomery. I have no problem doing that. He still is not playing a ton of snaps. He was at like 45% last week. He just got the ball a lot when he was in the game. He still has really shown nothing as a receiver out of the backfield. They have Tariq Cohen who can handle that. They have Mike Davis too who can sprinkle in. So you're really banking on Montgomery being like a 100-yard rusher with a touchdown at his current salary, and I'm fine fading that. I mean, Montgomery has averaged less than 4 yards per carry in each of his first 2 games. So unless you think he's in line for like a 20 to 25 carry night, I just don't see a ton of upside with him.
Jeff, which player over 7K do you like the least and would fade?
Yeah, I'm definitely kind of on the Montgomery fade train too. He's such an easy pivot too, because you can go to Cohen and then mix him with Trubisky, and then if you get the passing touchdown and Montgomery just stays out of the end zone, you're in heaven, right? So I like that switch too. I'm kind of into fading Terry McLaren too. I mean, you look at how the Bears defense is set up. They have really good corners on the outside, and they have a good pass rush. I just don't know if Case Keenum's going to have time to get the ball downfield. And you also look like in the middle, they've kind of been worse than they were last year without Adrian Amos against tight ends and slot receivers. So Trey Quinn, Vernon Davis, those are probably the guys I would go to on the Redskins defense. So I do think McLaren and Montgomery both setting up as potential fade candidates. I probably like the idea of fading Montgomery more, just because McLaren could get there on one big play, and there's might be some garbage time. But yeah, I think both those players kind of setting up as fades for me.
Jeff, who do you like for under 5K?
Yeah, under 5K is, I mean, there are a lot of different options here. I'm going to go with Trey Quinn, though. Again, slot receivers against the Bears have done pretty well. We saw Emmanuel Sanders kind of get there last week, and Quinn has been consistently targeted. I do think the Bears pass rush is going to disrupt a very good offensive line for the Redskins, who has been giving Case Keenum time. But, like Khalil Mack's going to do something this game for sure. So I think Trey Quinn could be in for a few more targets. I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up with like 5-7 catches.
Matt, who are you looking at for under 5K?
Yeah, I like that call. I'm a big Trey Quinn guy, so I'm always on board with playing him. I like Anthony Miller at 3,600 as well. If you want to just go with the full Trubisky stack, he's got a correlation of roughly 62% with Trubisky. So in games where Trubisky is good, you can typically count on some production from Anthony Miller. I'm not sure why I just blanked on his name.
That's
I think
because he has barely caught a pass this year, and no one remembers who he is.
That's why I'm fine with that. I mean, Trubisky's been bad. He's been bad, and I think that if we're gonna expect him to progress, we need to expect a little bit more from some of his pass catching options. So I like him as a tournament play for sure.
really quick because we're under 30 seconds. Bears are 5.5-point road favorites. Do they cover the spread, Jeff?
Oh, I hate this spread just because I don't trust Matt Nagy at all. I would probably side with the Bears, though, because I do think Trubisky's going to rebound here.
Matt, what do you think?
No.
All
Just
right.
don't bet this game.
Okay.
Am I allowed to say that?
All right, guys.
I kind of agree.
Okay. Perfect, you guys. This has been The Sweat. Thanks for your time. We will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Be sure to tune in wherever you watch us. See you then.